Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavang, it does. They need me.
Hey everyone, it's GuildMM here. Welcome to another End of Dragons Q&A episode. So I was busy with work last week, and because of that, I was not able to post episode 2 on Wednesday. But don't worry, I decided to do episodes 2 and 3 together, and of course that will also mean 2 winners for the weekly 100 gold win. If you'd like to enter, please remember to leave your account ID in the comment section below, along with your question or suggestion. Okay, so let's get started. Our first winner of the week is Tears.5103. Congratulations. Here's the clip of me sending their gold to them. And they said, do you think the 12-man squad instances, the Deep or Urgo's Burrow from factions will make a comeback in Guild Wars 2? Really like those. So I think we could definitely see something like the Deep or Urgo's Burrow make a comeback. I don't think a dungeon would probably be the way they come back though. Maybe something like a fractal. Just to give context though, those 2 dungeons basically in Guild Wars factions, they were pretty much exclusive to the factions that they represented. The Deep was for Luxon and Urgo's Burrow was for Kurzik. I believe though, if you use the scroll from somebody in the party who was from that faction, then it didn't matter if you're either Kurzik or Luxon, you could still enter the dungeon. They also had a different variety of foes and a different variety of weapons that you're only able to get in those respective dungeons. So there was some exclusivity to farming those dungeons. I do think they could make a comeback, possibly as fractals. I don't think dungeons would be the way, just simply because from everything we've seen from Mainnet right now, they have not really done anything to tell you that, you know, they would probably bring back dungeons in some form. But that's not to say that that could not happen. It could, but from what I'm looking at right now, possibility of them coming back would probably be as a fractal, one for each of them. Our second winner for the week is Zunlai.3460. Congratulations. Here's the clip of their gold being sent. And they said, I would love if they expanded on dungeons a bit more. One, making them more difficult and rewarding. Implement more armor skins would be exciting too, as we are lacking in non-gem store skins. I believe that's gem store. I'd love to see Obsidian armor from Guild Wars 1 come over with some graphical updates. So I agree with that, you know, we'd love to see some more dungeons make their way to Guild Wars 2. Although, like I said to the previous question, something like the Deep or Urgo's Burrow, very engaging content, amazing maps that were made in Guild Wars 1, but I don't think we'll see them as dungeons anymore in Guild Wars 2. Again, there's been no indication that we would see any dungeons because ANET has not done anything new since I believe the last dungeon they've ever really done was the Aetherblade one, and that was in Living Story Season 1. Unfortunately, we'll have to probably see them in the form of fractals, which probably could still be exciting and fun, but I do agree that, I mean, that's not going to be the 12-man instance content that we were used to in Guild Wars 1, but you know, that realistically, that'd probably be the way it goes. I do agree with the armor skins as well. We should really have some more armor skins. I know that the outfits are an easy way for ANET to, you know, just pump them out and put them in the gem store, but it's very limiting because, you know, outfits, you have to like wear the entire thing. You can't pick and choose from your pieces that you like from the set. And I do miss when ANET used to release armor sets on the gem store. I understand the reason why they try to release a lot of things on the gem store. Of course, that's one way of them generating revenue for the game, and they do need it. But yes, every now and then, for every one item that they release on the gem store, maybe they could, you know, match that with something in game that could feel more rewarding. You know, you spend time to actually working and grinding to get that item. And I do agree, Obsidian armor in Guild Wars 1 was amazing. I'd love to see what it looks like in Guild Wars 2. And I do hope that that's the one armor set that they bring as an armor set and not as an outfit. And I'd love to see what it looks like as a reward rather than something on the gem store. So definitely agree with you on that one. AMM, I'm curious about the legendary armory, which might see its light with the release of End of Dragons. My question for you is, how do you think the price of legendary weapons Gen 1 will be affected by this feature? And also, how do you think the crafting price of legendary armor and weapon Gen 2 will be affected? So of course, one of the biggest factors about armory is the fact that you'll be able to use the legendary stat of whatever armor or weapon that you bind from the legendary weapons that you choose or craft. Those will give you the accessibility for you needed to actually use them across your account and not just one character. meaning you do not have to keep swapping your weapons back and forth between characters. Now that benefit of course might kill the actual market, because that would render it useless for people to have to accumulate a lot of weapons or a lot of different stats and things like that for their characters when they could just swap stats from the armory itself. So yes, they could definitely fall in price there, and that's been a huge discussion between me, Enko, and Sam in our podcast episode that we did, the Barons Club. If you'd like more details on that, you can go to that episode as well. Although armory as a whole is probably the best benefit for players in the game, there's been a huge long time problem in the game, which a lot of players could not afford to just, craft 6-7 legendaries or 5 legendaries or make 2-3 armor sets. So I think the armory solves that problem where people don't have to spend, hours upon hours just chasing the end reward and then finally having what they need to properly and efficiently play the game. Although this game does not require you to grind out the best gear, because again, this game, for one thing that it's known for is skill, right? You're known for being a skillful player in this game, but the armory will add that nice touch where it won't really chase you to go and try and make 5 sets or 6 sets or something. So the crafting prices of legendary Gen 1s will probably go down. Same with Gen 2s over time. If they ever release a legendary Gen 3 set and that set happens to have materials that are also used for Gen 1 and Gen 2, do not forget, as Gen 3 legendary gets expensive, Gen 1 and Gen 2 will still somewhat be up in price, because if they have any similar materials that they both use with the other set, then they'll go up in price naturally, right? So yeah, I mean, overall, I think we will see legendary Gen 1, Gen 2, and the armor probably start to slowly decline in price. Although we have to see how many people would actually have enough weapons or armors to begin with to bind for the armory itself. You will more likely see the decline sometime in the next months or maybe even a year after the armory comes out. Things like that usually take time before the market starts to shift in one direction. So it would be a slow shift, but that shift will happen. What does underwater combat need, in your opinion, to be more satisfying and engaging more players? PvP underwater. I've actually thought about this, like what could possibly be done for underwater combat that could make it maybe more engaging or I guess more refined. And overall, I think people usually criticize Guild Wars 2's underwater a little too much. I think the underwater combat in Guild Wars 2 is still better than a lot of MMOs. And I don't know if there's any other MMO that does it better. If you have anything in mind, you can leave a comment below in the comment section and let me know. So I thought of one way for it to be engaging, and this is really mostly related to the End of Dragons expansion, just the theme. I don't know any other way it could be engaging, but one thing that I came up with was, what if they combined the Jade Sea as some PvP map, right? They made a PvP map out of the Jade Sea. We know that in the lore, the Jade Sea is starting to form back into its original shape. It's starting to liquefy again from the solid state that it's been. So with that being said, we know that there could be parts of the map that are still solid and then parts of the sea that are still basically like turning into liquid at this point, right? I think one way they could do that is mixing solid and liquid states as a map, where you could probably like, you're shooting someone underwater, you're swimming, and then all of a sudden you come out of the water and like you're now in a solid state of room, kind of similar to Aquaman. If you guys have watched Aquaman, like a very similar way of using underwater combat there. So I would say something like that. Other than that, I don't know anywhere else they could make it engaging in. If anyone has a suggestion here, please let me know what you think. But that was just one of the thoughts that I thought about. Something similar to how Aquaman underwater is in that movie is something we'd probably see with the Jade Sea in underwater combat in End of Dragons. How do you think or hope we will encounter the deep sea dragon, and what do you think is its name? Well, I mean, everyone's been calling it Bubbles or Bob, or I don't know. Now, how will we encounter the deep sea dragon? I think maybe as we make our way from Tyria to Cantha, because it is inhabiting the ocean as we speak, right? So I feel like the only realistic way could be for us to see it right off the start of the expansion as we're making our way to Cantha. We don't have to necessarily get a big reveal, but maybe more just subtle hints that it's watching us as we're crossing the borders to Cantha. I feel like even though that sounds like a little unrealistic to see it right off the bat, right? Like it's a very high hopes to see the reveal too early. But I think it makes sense if we're gonna be crossing the ocean anyway, that we meet it literally at the start of the expansion. They don't have to show the entire dragon right away. They could maybe just show bits and pieces of it, and then we could just kind of be getting the hint that it's there, it's watching us. So that's where I think we will encounter it. Do you think the mastery system is good? Do you want to see an end of dragons, or do you want to see something new? On the topic of new race, it's a lot of work to introduce one that isn't similar to the already existing races regarding armor skins. Also, I think there should be a race change item in the gem store, because maybe some people want their main character to be one of the new race. So a lot of people have kind of been 50-50 on this. People want a new race, and then the other 50% believe that, you know, it's just not possible to get a new race. I know a lot of people's opinions are basically that it's too difficult to implement because, one, the armor skins, like you said, they have to like literally clip every armor skin to the new race to make it like work. Then two, it takes a lot of time and effort to build a story instance for the new race. Do they start at level 0, level 80? Something I actually answered in the previous Q&A, where I think it should just be done as a level 80 race. It starts off with a high-end zone rather than a low-end zone. And that also saves maps for the game that could be used for like high-level maps rather than using those resources to just make low-level maps that might not get populated again. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. I do think End of Dragons, if there was ever a time to introduce a new race, it would be in End of Dragons. I talked about like features that made the expansion what they were. Heart of Thorns, we had gliding, and it introduced the mastery system. Path of Fire one-upped that and introduced mounts. So I feel like the only thing that could be a game-changing feature at this point is just having a new race. Specializations, we've been getting specializations every expansion, so it's expected we probably get the same idea in End of Dragons, but new race has never been done before, which is why I believe if there's ever a time, it should be in this expansion. So with the topic of race change item, I think they mentioned a few years ago the reason why they weren't able to do it was because it kind of affected, I guess, the story of your character. And so it's just not possible because your character is using a different story, and it would mess up the whole story instance for you. I think one suggestion that people have talked about in the forums, well, you can't purchase that item until you're level 80 or something, because then the story is pretty much the same once you're level 80. And I think that could be a workable decision that can basically work around. So yes, if they do find a way to work around that, then I guess that's fine. They can include the race change item. It is a feature that's been long demanded and asked for. Of course, it's up to ANET if whether or not they're able to make that item a reality for us. Hey, great video. Do you think we could expect a guild hall rework for GVG? Because currently guild halls are under PvE meta, and the overflow system is just a pain to get 30 people in the same instance. Thank you for the giveaway, by the way. So most players in World vs. World have been asking for an instance version of Edge of the Mist, for GVG at least. I don't know if they could do it for guild halls. Maybe they could make an instance version of the guild hall where you go to the arena and then maybe you enter an instance version of the map that's only for GVGs. That could work, but then that also means more coding or more pressure on their servers, because that means an entirely new guild hall instance has to be created. Although, if they were to implement a solution for current guild halls right now, maybe they can add in the option to the NPC itself, you know, where you go to the coordinator to pick your teams. Maybe they could add in choose option or set guild hall arena to World vs. World meta, or PvP or PvE version, right? Because World vs. World and PvE do not use the same meta. A lot of skills and traits are actually different between the game modes. So if they want to make that work, maybe they could add in an option like that where you can just go to the NPC and just click which version of the instance you want for the arena itself. That could work. Other than that, maybe just an instanced World vs. World map that would exist literally in the panel of World vs. World, and you could use that for GVGs. So those are the only two options I could see it working out for GVGs. Either have the option where people can select to choose World vs. World meta before they enter the arena, or they could have an instanced version of Edge of the Mist or an instanced map that's specifically in World vs. World that's used for GVGs. An instanced guild hall would be cool, but I feel like that's probably one that they would not want to do because that's probably the one that takes the most resources for them. You could make the argument that an instanced version of Edge of the Mist is also the same problem, although it's probably easier for them to actually implement that in World vs. World than it is for the guild hall. Dye channels on weapons would be amazing. Yes, this has actually been a long demanded feature as well in the game, to dye weapons in the game. Guild Wars 1 actually already had this. You could dye weapons in Guild Wars 1. It was very simple though, like it was just literally one color shade that you could dye the weapon to. It wasn't something too complicated. With Guild Wars 2, we've seen the multiple ways that dyes can be used on different armor sets. And I think it definitely would be a cool addition to include that on weapons. Just something that, you know, whether or not they decide to implement. I'm sure it will take a long time to do it though, because we've gone through so many different weapons at this point in the game. But they'd have to come up with so many different dye channels depending on the weapons. Some might have 2, some might have 3, some might even have 4. So I think ANET would probably take their time if they ever wanted to implement dye channels, just so they can make sure they have the right amount for the weapons that they're going to implement them. It could be for future weapons, maybe not necessarily all the weapons right now. Although, you know, if they're going to implement dye channels, you'd feel like it would be more complete if it also included the previous weapons before the update. So yes, it would definitely be an amazing feature. What if the new endgame challenge was to increase the fractal cap from 100 to 150 or maybe 200 and add CM modes to every fractal? I feel like that would kind of be a lazy way of adding content to the game without actually having to add content to the game. Yes, you can increase the levels in fractals. Maybe they could add more CM modes to every fractal. Although I feel like it just feels like an easy way out. While that can actually be the possibility, that could be our endgame content. Hey, we increase the level cap on fractals. I feel like there's many other ways they can make the game more interesting with different other instances or new fractals. At least if they're actually going to increase anything or add anything to the game, maybe add in more fractals first. So will a currency in-game now become significantly more valuable, or do you think they'll release a new currency? Hi YouTube, hey Diz, what's up? And so with currencies, it's very simple. I mean, if they release something that requires a particular currency, then that currency suddenly becomes more valuable, right? If they release something that required karma, then all of a sudden people would start spending their karma. Same with unbound magic or volatile magic, or the tens of currencies that came with Heart of Thorns or Path of Fire. So yes, anything that requires a certain currency, you'll start to see more demand for that currency. Likewise, they've also implemented some NPCs sometimes in some maps where they will exchange a previous currency, and then there's a currency exchange between currencies. And that's happened a few times. They've experimented with that quite a few times. So really, it just depends on what they release that will require said currency. Will they release a new currency? Most likely. End of Dragons more likely will introduce a couple more currencies. Something I talked about with Enko and Sam on the Barons Club podcast, episode 2, if you guys want to check that out, is ANET tends to release too many currencies and then forgets about them. And then that makes it where previous currencies no longer have any value because they're only relevant to the content they were released in. There's no, long-term solution to them. And if ANET, like we've mentioned, if they've stuck on currencies and just tried to have some currency that kind of has like a universal appeal, right? A lot of the times they make currency that's related to the content that's being released for. I think if they tried to be a little more general in their currency releases, so something that like works now but then also can work 5-6 contents down the line, that would serve them better, because then you minimize the amount of currencies released to the game, you minimize the amount of currencies that people have to memorize to know which one belongs to what content and which currency you need for what. So I think long-term solutions for currencies where they minimize the amount of currencies but then maximize the few that they have and use that on the long-term method would go a long way. And this doesn't just apply to just currencies in your wallet. This could also be materials. I mean, ANET has used materials as a way of currency as well in the past and in the present right now. I mean, some NPC vendors take materials. So if they can rely on that, I think that would do them better than trying to release too many currencies and then just going to the next content and releasing another set of currencies. So, less is more in this case. I personally don't think new mounts are a necessity. At most, upgrading the existing ones like they did would be for the skimmer would be sweet. With this idea in mind of reusing the old to make new/better, what features used today would you like to see refreshed? I actually mentioned that in the previous Q&A, we might see a Cantha inspired mount come out in End of Dragons. That's something that's realistic to say. At some point down the line, we will probably see a mount like that that's, inspired out of this expansion. However, with that being said, I do agree at the point of maybe just reusing what we currently have and making that better. I mean, that's quality over quantity, right? And I think with the mounts that we have today, ANET has shown us the creativity they can come up with. They've come up with some really nice mount skins, some questionable ones, right? Like the Pegasus or something, and others really well done, right? So they've come up with a nice variety of skins. So maybe just reusing the current mounts and just making those better. Yes, I agree that that could be a better solution to go down the line. We've seen with current mounts that we have, some of them become obsolete over time with the introduction of newer mounts. The biggest example of this is a Skyscale mount that was introduced in Dragonfall. The Skyscale, as we've seen right now, maintains its height from a certain altitude, and it can go a little higher if you use your Vitality. The Skyscale mount can also boost its way up by clinging to walls and platforms and then giving itself a small jump, which means Skyscale right now kind of replaces a Springer in some cases. Springer can still jump higher, but Skyscale can essentially do what a Springer does. I've noticed a lot of people use their Skyscale more than they would even use a Springer at some point, depending on the places they're at. But 80% of the time, people just switch to the Skyscale if they have to go up somewhere. Now, what features would I like to see? Or one of the most requested features is people want the additional spot of someone being able to ride with you on the same mount, so that having 2 people per mount. Although that's going to be causing a lot of issues for the game and possibly break the game, so I think that's not something we'll definitely be able to see. So a few features I think could make some of these mounts slightly have a better edge. And this doesn't necessarily mean that this is exactly what they can release, but something along these lines. For example, I think Skyscale could maybe use another skill that could increase its altitude a bit higher than using the number 7 skill, the Vitality, that increases it for a temporary set of time. So that could be for the Skyscale, increase of altitude, or maybe increase of speed, because it is a very slow mount. The Griffin, for example, I mean, I've already seen the Griffin community and what they can do. Like, some of those Griffin riders can literally stay on the Griffin for as long as they want in the air, like 30 minutes sometimes, right? So I know that it's a possible way for Griffins to fly and stay in the air for as long as you want. Although, and they're gonna flame me for this, but the Griffin, it's pretty obvious. Like, the Griffin pretty much glides down. I mean, I said it, I'm gonna get flamed for this, but it has to be said, right? The Griffin kind of glides down. I'd like to see them release a skill that kind of increases the duration of where the Griffin glides down eventually. So that could actually add into more flying time for them. I don't think they should make Griffins stay in the air as long as possible like Skyscale, because then that defeats the purpose of Skyscale. Because the Griffin right now honestly is a superior mount in terms of speed and flight, and even beat roller beetles, by the way. We've seen that like multiple times. So for them to add a skill that just makes the Griffin fly better than the Skyscale, that would kind of, make the Skyscale obsolete. So the only skill I could see them increase for Griffin is increasing the duration of the gliding for the Griffin. And that way it would kind of make it slightly better. And for maybe starters, people who are not used to flying on the Griffin, maybe they could actually have more airtime because of that. For the Jackal mount, I think one way they could make that better is if you're in a sandy area, maybe have the teleportation skill where your space bar basically allows you to teleport with the Jackal. Maybe have that like go through a longer duration, so you can maybe teleport to longer distances. That could be a possible way for the Jackal. For Raptor, I feel like they could just add a 3rd endurance bar, and that way you could maybe jump long distances 3 times rather than 2 times. Overall, those are the ones that come to mind. I know I didn't have anything for Springer or for Roller Beetle or for the Warclaw, but yeah, the other ones that came to mind were for those mounts specifically. Suggestion: they should implement trade system within Guild Wars 2 to avoid scammers and shady players, so we can trade safely. Also, no trade gold cap would be nice. I agree on the trade gold cap. It'd be nice if the trading post could take more than 10,000 gold. That has been a requested feature in the trading post, so it possibly can happen in the future. As much as I would love a trade system in Guild Wars 2, a trade system this far into the game after 8 years of release would do a huge damage to the market of the trading post. Trading post has a good benefit. The tax, while it's annoying as it is, the tax system is there to prevent the gold inflation, and there's a lot of other ways they've prevented gold inflation, but the tax system really is good for preventing the long-term effects. And we've seen other MMOs and how their gold has inflated to levels of where some MMOs it costs you 5,000 gold just to repair armor, right? And Guild Wars 2 is one of those MMOs where I think the market really is the best that you'll ever get in an MMO. Guild Wars 2, I mean, someone can debate me on it. Tell me another MMO that has a better market system or a economy system than Guild Wars 2, and yeah, I'll wait for that in the comment section below. I'll fight you for that. In fact, I'll bring 20 barons to fight. So while It'd be fun to see a trade system implemented. It's too late for that. If they ever wanted a trade system, it should have been done at the release of the game. It's nice and all, but hey, we don't have that, you know. And again, we have to live with the fact that it's very shady to send mail to other players that we don't know about, and then of course maybe possibly them scamming us. Although if you would like a trade system that currently exists in the game, well, the closest thing you have to that is the Overflow Trade Discord. So if you want to trade, come join the Overflow Trading Company Discord, link in the description below. We have some safety measures, ways to avoid how to get scammed, and some of those measures include, you know, checking on the trade history of players, you know, vouching for people and seeing people who have had a reputation of having multiple trades under their belt, and in that way you can at least safely trade with those players. So yeah, if you'd like to see the closest thing that we have to a trade system in the game, then the Overflow Trading Company Discord is the closest to that. And it's also the biggest trade market in the game that we have right now. Suggestions. I really hope they fix the graphic engine. I personally love open world metas, but when I have to decrease character model and quality to low so my FPS won't drop to 5 FPS, it's really annoying. Also, give more freedom for add-ons like World of Warcraft. Definitely something that I've also talked about, and everybody, in fact, a lot of people have wished for ANET to upgrade the graphic engine. Definitely needs to be done. Right now, as it stands, we have a very old graphics engine, right? We use DirectX 9, and that's basically the same engine Guild Wars 1 was using in some capacity. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and something I've talked about, that if ANET took the time to maybe implement a graphics overhaul over the course of a year and a half, they would be at least, you know, if they did this in 2020 during the coronavirus, they could have at least been 30% done maybe with the graphics overhaul, right? 30%, 40%, you know, that's not 100% done, but you know, you're almost there, right? And then they probably could have gotten to about 70% by the time the expansion came out, and then the rest of the 30%, 40% could have been done months after the expansion. You know, if they took the time to do a graphics overhaul, if they took the time to implement those huge updates over time, you know, splitting them into like 5-6 graphic overhaul updates that entered the game, we would have been there already. So yeah, definitely wish the graphics engine gets updated at some point. It would be a shame for End of Dragons to come out and then we still have some limitations to the engine. And I think ANET right now, I know they don't want to take the time because it is time consuming. And I think one of the reasons they don't want to do a graphic engine overhaul is because if they mess it up, it could mess up the game. But here's the thing, you have an internal code, you know, you could always just work with the internal code, and if that breaks, that's fine. It doesn't do anything to the live code of the game still works fine. The internal code is really where you want to practice everything, right? But as soon as you fix everything in the internal code, then you can bring it over to the live code and then work from there. And I think ANET just doesn't want to spend the time, but I think this is one thing, if they ever want to spend the time on, this would be the one idea to do it, because this graphic overhaul could actually implement more future updates that were not possible before. So this would be the one thing you want to focus on for ANET. Freedom for add-ons like World of Warcraft, I don't know. I mean, I'm usually iffy about add-ons in games in general. So for me personally, I don't see the necessity for add-ons. I can understand the appeal of having add-ons to change in the game. But yeah, it's not for me. So the original video got deleted, which is why I'm wearing a hoodie. This is actually 3 days later, by the way. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this week's Q&A, episodes 2 and 3 together. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like, as it does help the algorithm. If you do have any questions or suggestions for next week's episode, please comment them below, and make sure to add your account ID, as I am picking a winner every video. So if you'd like to win 100 gold, make sure to comment your account ID along with your question or suggestion. So that's it for this video, guys. So until then, I will see you when I see you. Take care.